Leader speaking about Ukraine at the UN General Assembly in New York. President Zelensky used his speech at the United Nations to take sharper aim at China, accusing Beijing of pushing a flawed peace plan while simultaneously helping Moscow. Nick Wadhams, who leads Bloomberg's U.S. national security coverage, joins us now for more on this. And Nick, we heard from Antony Blinken as well earlier this week talking about China helping Russia. Tell us exactly what the rhetoric around China's involvement here has been.
Well, what you're seeing is essentially a U.S. administration and now increasingly Ukraine expressing what they say is growing alarm about a deepening relationship between Russia and China. Now, that they're very explicit about saying that China has not so far provided lethal aid to Russia in the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but they're seeing substantial support in other ways, including geospatial imagery that Ukraine says could be used to attack nuclear power plants by Russia. So a lot of effort to push these accusations more and more on China. China, on the other hand, the foreign minister Wang Yi essentially denying those allegations, saying China wants peace and even has a plan to push forward to halt the fighting. But for the time being, at least, it looks like the fighting will almost certainly continue, neither side showing any indication that they want to back down.
We've seen the US announce a new weapons package for Ukraine as well. How much longevity do we get from this sort of workaround plan, given the failure to negotiate the drawdown facility?
Well, I mean, time is running out. There are several billion more dollars left, so that they can continue with these packages. But there is going to be a question coming in the next several months, which is, the U.S. is going to need to approve new funding for Ukraine if it wants to continue to do that, and it's going to be running into some severe challenges in the Republican-dominated House. I mean, support for Ukraine is generally a bipartisan issue, though, of course, former President Donald Trump has come out and spoken of Ukraine aid much more critically. So it's not clear how much he's really going to be able to exert sway over Republicans on the Hill. But the last time you had a supplemental package to approve aid for Ukraine, there was quite a fight. It got hung up for several months. And in fact, Ukraine said that that delay caused a lot of setbacks on the battlefield. So almost certainly we'll be seeing a new round of fighting within the U.S. Congress over plans for a fresh supplemental in the months to come.
As of course we continue to watch the attacks on Hezbollah targets by Israel in Lebanon as well, how much attention is this getting right now, and what are we hearing about the latest developments on the ground?
Well, there's a meeting that's underway as we speak at the UN Security Council about the Lebanon crisis. And just as the meeting began, France's foreign minister said that France and the U.S. had been working on a 21-day ceasefire proposal. The idea being to stop the fighting for 21 days, 3 weeks between Hezbollah and Israel, and hopefully create the space for negotiations for a broader political settlement, and then try to use that to push for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip. So those are the lofty, longer-term goals, but for the time being, at least, there does seem to be some momentum toward this idea of a 3-week pause between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon, essentially to avert those fears of a wider war in the region.
Do the prospects of a truce for Gaza look pretty slim at this point? We've seen just the deadlock negotiations, right? And it almost feels like that conflict is sort of fading into the background.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're seeing there is essentially a rock and a hard place situation between Israel and Hamas. Western leaders, including Joe Biden, have said, they're going to keep at it. But we so far have not seen any indication that Israel is willing to give up on its central demand that Hamas essentially be eradicated from the Gaza Strip and be unable to function as a military entity or as a governing entity. Of course, Hamas says it's not going to agree to something that would essentially guarantee its removal from power, and they want a halt in the fighting first. And we just have not seen the two sides be able to bridge those gaps. So, as it continues, the fighting has the focus of the fighting has moved north with Hezbollah, but certainly no ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Gaza right now.
Nick Wadhams, who leads Bloomberg's US national security coverage, for us with the latest. Well, still ahead, we get some analysis now underway for a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. A former US Deputy Special Envoy for the Middle East of Peace joins the show in just a few minutes' time for that conversation. This is Bloomberg.
The business landscape is increasingly complex, with evolving consumer preferences, emerging technologies, economic uncertainty, and the pressure to decarbonize. Our clients need support to stay competitive and grow their operations when they choose to. At City Commercial Bank, our expertise, reach, and culture of innovation has made us the bank of choice for successful, fast-growing companies.
In 2015, I was not optimistic because nobody was working on the hard problems. The energy R&D budgets had gone down. The venture investing in climate had gone down. It was completely out of fashion. So I don't know what people were optimistic about then. The fact is, we built essentially from scratch, with lots of supporters, a really mind-blowing level of innovation against emissions. And in the last 9 years, that's gone better than I would have expected. So only now could you even, plausibly be optimistic about the path of emissions. And someone who said, hey, nobody's ever scaled things up very like this speed that we knew to before, they're welcome to say, hey, I'll believe this when I see it. In the meantime, some people who care about this issue are really out, trying to think, do we need permitting reform? Do we find what new ideas haven't we found yet? How do we fund people with those new ideas? How do we get the costs of these things down? How do we collaborate on a global basis? So we're still not at the point where it's guaranteed or even that it'll be easy, but at least there's a theory of change.
Micron jumping after hours after a strong revenue forecast. Let's discuss those numbers and bring in our tech reporter, Annabelle Drewlers. Bell, a solid report, and again, all to do with AI.
Yeah, that's right. Micron's really been benefiting from sales of so-called HBM chips. They're really essential to powering AI tools. But let's just get to those numbers in particular because, as we said, a strong beat here, good forecast for the fiscal fourth quarter or the fiscal first quarter. We're talking about $8.7 billion. That's what the company is looking for. You compare that $8.7 billion to the average analyst projection. It was for $8.3. Profit per share, that's also expected to be higher than what analysts had been tipping, about 20 cents better. So the guidance for $1.74 versus $1.52. And then for that period just gone at Micron, again, we saw that revenue jump of 93%. And to your point, it just speaks to that demand for AI products. And Micron has a very strong sales pipeline, and they've been able to lift prices as a result.
We're also hearing about some changes afoot at OpenAI.
Yeah, this was actually first reported by Reuters, but we're adding our own context to it as well at Bloomberg with the confirmation. But essentially, possibly major changes underway to its business structure. So what we're hearing from sources that it's looking at becoming a for-profit structure instead. Now, OpenAI, just getting into a bit of the history of the company here, but it was established in 2015 with the intention to be a research organization focused on building AI that was safe and also that helped humanity. Fast forward a few years to 2019, where it was starting to take on a lot of different funding, and a for-profit structure was established as a subsidiary that sat underneath that for-profit top-line structure. That could become a thing of the past here. As we said, OpenAI may become a for-profit instead. It could give Sam Altman, the CEO, equity as well.
And just quickly, changes in leadership as well there?
This is quite significant. So the CTO, Mira Murati, has announced her resignation on X overnight. We're hearing that this took a lot of people by surprise, not just externally, but internally as well. She is one of the last remaining people that was an initial co-founder of the business. There's actually only two that are left there now. One of those is Sam Altman, but very essential to the business as a whole. She was really behind ChatGPT, for instance, bringing that to market, the new voice assistant feature, image generation software as well. So again, Mira Murati departing, many people surprised at the business.
Annabelle Jewell is there in Hong Kong. Much more ahead on the Asia trade. This is Bloomberg.
You talked about how governments are not looking at healthcare and investing in healthcare as much as they should. What's the message you'd like to send to those governments?
Well, I think a healthier population is always going to be more productive. It's just that sometimes the political will isn't there in some of these countries. So I hope that they can keep this as a priority, because a workforce that is 20 or 30% down during a pandemic or an outbreak, or there's certain diseases that keep spreading, is not healthy, it's not productive. And if you want everyone to perform at their best and you want healthcare costs to be down, you don't want to be burdened with insurance costs and other costs. I think it's important to invest early in health, in child health, in women's health, and I hope that continues both in India and other parts.
In tech are on Bloomberg.
I don't like anthropomorphizing AI. I sort of believe it's a tool. It is got intelligence, if you want to give it that moniker, but it's not the same intelligence that I have.
This industry of producing intelligence is one of the greatest opportunities I've ever seen. The world has very few experts in C++ and C. But the world has many people who knows how to converse and ask somebody for help. Instead of instruction-driven computing, it's now intention-driven computing.
You know, this AI opportunity is really tremendous. You have an ecosystem of companies coming together along with all of these incredible innovations. It's causing a new industrial revolution.
This is a tsunami, Ed. This is a tsunami of change. And only the smart ones are going to recognize I have to plant the flag now.
Nobody covers technology like Bloomberg. Context changes everything.
Il ne doit pas, il ne peut pas y avoir
we cannot have a war in Lebanon.
Israël, quant à lui, ne
Israel cannot, without consequence, just expand its operations to Lebanon. France demands that everyone respect their obligations along the blue line.
I would like to see a ceasefire and the return home of Israelis to the homes in the north and southern Lebanese to their homes in southern Lebanon. That's what we all want to achieve. It will happen either after a war or before a war. We hope it will be before.
Comments from officials at the UN General Assembly on the conflict in the Middle East. Our next guest says global leaders are in an all-hands-on-deck moment to get to ceasefire deals between Israel and Hezbollah and with Hamas.